All right, great. Looks like we could get started. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining today's presentation on urban birds in Clark County. My name is Olivia Burns. I am the Education and Engagement Fellow for Clark County's Department of Environment and Sustainability. Today, we are joined by wildlife biologist Alex Harper from Red Rock Audubon Society, which is a local nonprofit dedicated to environmental stewardship of habitats in the Mojave Desert to protect birds and natural world across Southern Nevada. Before Alex starts his presentation, I will briefly go over a few tips to enhance your presentation experience. There is a closed caption option available, which allows you to view captions in the language of your preference. You can find this option by clicking the CC button on the presentation viewing screen. Then from the drop-down menu, select the language of your choice. If you have difficulties viewing or hearing the presentation at any time, please refresh the page and double check that the mute button is not clicked. This presentation is being recorded and will be available on the Department of Environment and Sustainability's YouTube page, and it will be available on the All In Sustainability Leaders Program webpage, which you are viewing on right now. Lastly, if you have any questions during the presentation, you can add your question next to the viewing screen, and we will get to them at the end of the presentation. And now we'll welcome Alex from Red Rock Audubon Society. Thank you, Alex.
Hey, thank you, Olivia, for that introduction and for inviting me to speak to the Clark County employees and staff. People of Clark County, thank you so much for helping the city run and doing everything that you do sort of behind the scenes or in the scenes to make this city function. I've lived in the city for about 8 years now, and it has become home to me. So it's with great pleasure that I present to you all a presentation that is dear to me, the urban birds of Clark County. And my slideshow is just lagging here, not sure why, but it will move. There we go. Okay, so just a little bit more about myself. I'm a wildlife biologist specializing on the study of birds, and I've been an environmental scientist and biologist for most of my adult life. And then about a year ago, I transitioned from conducting science in the field to adopting more education and science communication. And Red Rock Audubon Society is an organization that helps me to do that and achieve that. One of the reasons for that is when you're learning to become a scientist, one of the things that you don't learn to do is communicate with the public. And I've decided that that was something that needed to be done. So here I am communicating with the public about technical jargon and data-driven science. So what brought me out here originally is the opportunity to conduct science on the renewable energy industry and sites that wind and solar facilities were being developed at or proposed to be developed at. So that's what brought me out here initially. And now I work within the community to talk about some of the scientific discoveries and just help people enjoy the birds that are around us. We have a number of different bird species in Las Vegas and the Las Vegas metropolitan area in Clark County. So we'll talk about some of those in just a few moments here. Every good organization has a vision and a mission. So here is ours. We are adjusting our vision and mission. This is actually an updated version that we created last fall of 2022. And that is because our environment is changing, and we recognize that with the environment changing, the issues facing birds and the habitats that birds live in are also changing. We also understand that not everyone has had the opportunity to get out and enjoy nature and birds. So we have incorporated more of an initiative to get more people out into nature and to enjoy the bounty of birds and natural areas that actually do exist within Las Vegas if you know how to look for it. So some topics that we'll cover today. I like to start off with a big picture to begin with, and then kind of break up that big picture into smaller chunks or frames, and then take a look at different examples before weaving it all together. So after that big picture, we'll take a look at some of our everyday birds of Las Vegas. And of course, when I say Las Vegas, I mean the Las Vegas metropolitan area. That includes Summerlin, Henderson, Enterprise, even Pahrump and Boulder City are close enough that more or less the birds are the same. We'll talk about some interesting birds of Clark County, how you can get started observing birds and observe nature in your community. Some tips on how to tell which is which. We have 430 species of birds that have been recorded in Clark County over time by scientists and bird watchers. So not all of them look the same. So we'll give you a couple tips here at the end to help you get started as a bird watcher. And then I'll share some surprising benefits to birds and bird watching, and then name a few hazards to birds. Okay, so I mentioned that big picture. Well, firstly, our metropolitan area and Clark County is situated smack dab in the center of the Mojave Desert. And the Mojave Desert has wetlands and other habitats throughout the desert. So as one moves throughout the Mojave Desert, you're not just going to see sort of like a uniform landscape. You're going to see that as you move up and down in elevation, like maybe go up into the mountains, that the types of plants change. And of course, with differences in the types of plants, you're going to have different types of animals. As I mentioned, over 430 different species of birds have been observed in Clark County over time. Some of those are rare or lost birds, so maybe there's only been one or two ever seen. For example, you might be surprised to hear that a snowy owl was at one point observed in Clark County up in Indian Springs like 80 years ago. And that's Harry Potter's owl. If you're familiar with the books and the movies, that white owl, that's a snowy owl. And we actually had one of those in Clark County many decades ago. So weird birds do show up, but I'd say typically annually we get about 350 regular species here. And it's important to remember that before Las Vegas was incepted, maybe about really going through a lot of growth about 115 years ago, when a railroad stop was positioned around current day Fremont Street or the Springs Preserve. This was open desert with a couple springs. And so we now have the city on top of what was formerly desert. And because we have this ability to irrigate and plant and install sprinkler systems and ponds, this place has become very attractive to birds and other wildlife. It's an urban oasis, if you will. I mentioned that we're in the Mojave Desert, and this map on the left is going to be helpful for helping you see where the Mojave Desert fits in amongst the other deserts and where it's positioned in the country of the United States. And there are about 4 different deserts in North America. The Reno area fits within the Great Basin Desert, for example, as does Salt Lake City. And then the cities of Phoenix or Yuma or Tucson, they're in the Sonoran Desert. So that's where you have those big, giant, tall cacti called saguaros. Those are in the Sonoran. And then over in El Paso and parts of north central Mexico, you have the Chihuahuan Desert. And a desert is any habitat that gets 10 inches or less on average annually. So already this year, we've had quite a bit of rain. This is an average over time, of course, but the Mojave Desert is getting about 4 inches of rain annually. So that's an overview of the desert, the Mojave Desert, and where Las Vegas is relative to the Mojave Desert. We are within the desert. We are a city within the desert, and we've done a pretty good job of making it appear like it's not within the desert, but we certainly are. We are very much in a desert climate. So here's a bird that I'm starting off with that you might be familiar with. This is the Sinsonte norte, in Spanish, the northern mockingbird. It's got a very widespread range. You might recognize it by name. The book To Kill a Mockingbird is named after this type of bird. And the northern mockingbird is a species that in the next few weeks will start to sing at night. And the reason for that is they sing during full moons. But with all the artificial light that we have created with our buildings and our towers and our street lights and planes flying over, we always have artificial light all night long. And so that has tricked the mockingbird into believing that there's a full moon. And so it triggers in them a behavior that is sort of unique to this bird. And so that's when they begin singing. So for those of you that wonder what that bird is that's singing all night long in the spring and the summer, it's probably this bird, the northern mockingbird. They have a variable repertoire, so they can sing a number of different songs or phrases. That's what helps them get the name mockingbird, because they can mimic or imitate other birds. They'll also mimic barking dogs, honking horns, or car alarms, or squeaky swing sets. They have the ability to do that. And they're very protective over fruit bushes. So if you have any fruiting plants around, chances are you have mockingbirds guarding them. They're very aggressive. Then we have a couple species of palomas, of doves. We of course have pigeons. We're all familiar with pigeons. Pigeons are a type of dove. And then we have some smaller doves as well, like the mourning dove. You can identify a mourning dove by its round head, its fairly thin bill that it uses to eat grass seeds. It's overall kind of this sandy brown. And if you look at the back of this bird, you'll see these black dots. So they have these black spots on the back, and that helps to separate them from this other species of dove, the collared dove. And the collared dove is named the collared dove that has a collar going around its neck. It's a little bit more tan and less brown than the mourning dove. It's a little bit bigger, and it does not have those black spots. But what it does have is that black collar. And so even when you have similar looking bird species, you can look for these subtle different things about what it seems like the bird is wearing. Like, let's say we can think of it as wearing a costume. Well, what bird costume does this have? Well, the bird on the left has these black spots without a collar. The bird on the right has a collar and no black spots. And so you can see both of these birds today if you start paying attention a little bit more, or maybe you already do, but these birds are out there, and I encourage you to go look for them on your day-to-day. They will begin to coo, make these beautiful sounds that kind of sound like owls, or these soft morning sounds any day now, because believe it or not, birds are beginning to think about breeding. It's almost spring. We do have woodpeckers in the Las Vegas area. So on the left-hand side, you have a fairly large species of woodpecker. It's called the northern flicker. It looks like it has that red mustache, and then this nice black patterning running down the back that are kind of like lines. And then as it gets closer to the tail, they become more of just like a mottled patterning, more spots. And the flickers are here for the fall, the winter, and the spring, and then they'll migrate out of here in a few months, and they'll head up to Alaska and Canada, and maybe up into the spring mountains, so you can catch them up at Fletcher Canyon or Deer Creek in the middle of the summer, but they will vacate this area in the summertime. Then we have the ladder-backed woodpecker on the right-hand side. It's a little bit smaller, but you can get them virtually anywhere in Las Vegas any time of year. I've had them in fairly urban locations, like at the Winchester Dondero Cultural Center, or I've had them around schools. I have them in my neighborhood near the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. So find some trees and you'll probably find some woodpeckers. We have two kinds of woodpeckers that are often seen in the city, but there are about 5 that call Clark County home. Sometimes you just have to get more into the wilderness to find other species of woodpecker. This bird here, this is called a lesser goldfinch. And the goldfinch is a type of finch. You've probably heard of finches. Finches like to eat seeds. They don't eat a lot of fruit, although they will a little bit. They'll eat a couple insects, but mostly they're only feeding insects to young when the young are growing in a nest because they need the protein to grow. But for the most part, their diet is mostly of seeds. And remember, I mentioned that Las Vegas is within sort of this urban oasis. Well, that's because we have the ability to irrigate and we have the ability to plant certain trees here. And a lot of the trees that are planted here are not native to here. They're imported from other countries or other continents. So this species of tree here is called the Chinese elm, and it's from East Asia, as you can probably guess. And they produce thousands upon thousands of seeds per tree, and that feeds birds like lesser goldfinches. So this is actually kind of cool that Las Vegas serves as a place that can accommodate wildlife, because we have the ability to do things here with the ability to plant and manipulate where water goes. Now, of course, that's going to change in the next few years and decades as we adjust our water usage with the conditions in Lake Mead and the Colorado River being what they are. But this phenomena is still happening, and there are other trees that are less water demanding that can also help to accommodate lesser goldfinches, like perhaps native trees that are suited to the Mojave Desert environment. Here's a bird that you're definitely used to. This is a great-tailed grackle. And grackles might look like crows or ravens, but they're not that related to crows or ravens. We actually don't have crows in Las Vegas. We're one of the only cities in the United States that does not have crows. But if you went to Flagstaff or LA, San Diego, you'd start to see crows. But it's just a little bit too dry here for them in the Mojave Desert. We do have lots of ravens. Ravens aren't in the city all that often. Usually you get them if you go to like Red Rock Canyon, or you head out of the city towards California. They're definitely along the highways. I see them in the city every now and then, but the big dark black birds are usually grackles. A good way to tell them apart is they have this purplish iridescence. They're kind of thin compared to a crow or raven. They've got these long, funky looking tails that actually kind of get larger at the end of the tail. And they've got yellow eyes. So if you see a big dark bird with yellow eyes, you're not looking at a crow or raven. You're probably looking at a grackle. So these are some of the birds that you can see outside of pretty much any building in any neighborhood in Las Vegas. It doesn't really matter how urban or how developed and highly concentrated with buildings and people and infrastructure that you live in. Those birds you can see pretty much every single day in Las Vegas. Now, if you go to a park or a golf course that has water, well, you're going to see even more bird diversity. So find the water and you will find the birds. What you're looking at here is a black-crowned night heron. I took this photo at Floyd Lamb Park up in northwestern Las Vegas, and it's just finishing up eating a bass, and the bass are stocked into the ponds at Floyd Lamb Park by the Nevada Department of Wildlife so that people can enjoy fishing in parks that otherwise wouldn't provide any fish to fish because they're not there naturally. And so that attracts birds like the herons, and the herons are pretty good at catching fish. So water in Las Vegas also does more than just provide us the opportunity to watch birds. They actually have some really important conservation implications associated with them. So I want to tell you a little bit about this bird. This is a bird called a yellowlegs. And the yellowlegs lives part of its life up in Canada and Alaska where they breed. So that's where they go to raise young. And then for the wintertime, they head down into Mexico or into southern Arizona, southern California, into Central America to spend the wintertime. In between, they have to pass over desert. But the thing about this bird is that they need to find water in order to find food. This is not a bird that can just go feed in a tree. It can't feed in the open desert. It needs water, absolutely. And you're probably familiar with the fact that we are in a drought, and a lot of our wetlands are disappearing throughout the Mojave Desert. So because these birds need water, well, where do they go? Well, some of them actually go to the Las Vegas Wash because that's where there's water consistently, because water is there because it's meeting our demands as a municipality, and water flows out of the wash to go get recycled and reclaimed. And during that time, it's accommodating lots of wildlife like these birds. And I took this photo of this bird, which may be listed as endangered someday. And it was over in East Las Vegas. It was in Sunrise Manor in the Las Vegas Wash, just west of the Hollywood Community Center. So believe it or not, some of the things that we have created as a city to help our city function also has some great deal of value to some of the wildlife, including a bird like the lesser yellowlegs, which, like I said, is losing habitat. We have tons of waterfowl here, especially in the wintertime, when ponds and lakes are frozen over in many areas where ducks live. And so many of them come down in the wintertime to places like the Henderson Bird Viewing Preserve, Clark County Wetlands Park, Sunset Park. And we do have some ducks that are here year round, but the hooded mergansers are one of many that come down just for the wintertime. And that's what you're looking at here. Two birds called hooded mergansers. The male is on the left, the females are on the right. Fun fact about the coloration of female ducks and other birds: they tend not to be as vibrantly colored as the males, but that's because they're primarily the ones sitting on a nest, and they need to blend into the nest in order to camouflage so that they're not giving away the location of very sensitive eggs or baby ducklings that can be food for predatory animals like hawks or cats or foxes. And another thing, and I like to plug this in because a lot of well-intentioned people don't know this, but bread is actually not good for birds. It can actually cause some long-term health issues for birds. So if you know of anyone who is feeding ducks or pigeons bread, I know it comes from a good place, but it can harm these birds in the long run. So just wanted to throw that out there. I see a lot of people feeding the ducks at Sunset Park, and I'm like, I don't know if they know that they're actually causing a little bit of harm. If you go outside of the city, you have the chance of seeing bald eagles. Yes, we have bald eagles in the Las Vegas area. You have to get to places like Lake Mead or Paranagit National Wildlife Refuge. Paranagit's about an hour and a half away from Las Vegas. But bald eagles like to eat fish. And so if you go where the large fish are, you have a chance of seeing a bald eagle. Now, you're probably looking at this and thinking, wait a second, this guy is supposed to be a bird expert, but this is clearly not a bald eagle. Bald eagles have white heads and white tails and dark bodies, and that's definitely not this. Well, bald eagles are very long-lived, and it takes them about 5 years to get that classic white head, white tail, and dark body. This is a bird that is about 2 years old. So it has a little bit of brown. You can see a little bit of white coming in the tail, but it's going to take another 3 years for this particular bird to get that adult plumage. Look at the size of those feet. Those feet are huge. This is a formidable bird, and you can find them at Lake Mead. I took this photo at 33 hole, and I know that Lake Mead National Recreation Area just conducted their eagle surveys earlier this month in January, and I believe that they recorded about 150 bald eagles on Lake Mead. So there are quite a number of them around. and some of them actually attempt to breed over in Black Canyon near Willow Beach in Arizona, so just downstream from Hoover Dam. So how can we help birds during this drought, during the time period where climate change seems to be front and center? And wildlife definitely is having a tough time adjusting to a changing climate. So what can we do to help them? Well, you can make your property, wherever you live, or your workplace, a little bit more accommodating to birds. On top of climate change and habitat loss, some real threats to birds include outdoor cats. Outdoor cats are estimated to kill over 2 billion birds in Canada and the United States annually. There are just so many outdoor cats that people have around that over time they catch a lot of birds, and bird populations are declining, not only because of cats, but because of a bunch of other things. It's also estimated that about 1 billion birds die every year from colliding with windows or towers, especially when you have towers with lights on at night, because birds actually migrate at night. They use the stars and magnetic fields to orient, which is super cool and fascinating. And perhaps you didn't know that. Most people don't know that they are expert navigators at night, but they're not used to migrating now in a world that has big towers and lots of artificial light. The Las Vegas Strip is supposed to be one of the brightest sources of light as seen from space in the world. And so they get a little disoriented. And Las Vegas is simultaneously a place that can help birds. It can also be a place where they meet their end. Kind of depends on where they go. So what you can do is you can put out water. I highly suggest putting out a little bit of water for them, especially in the warmer months. You will start to attract birds to your neighborhood or your yard. So what you see here is a water dish that is set up, and I put it outside of my living room, and I put it out in the middle of the summer, and birds come to drink water constantly, and it brings me a lot of joy, and I know I'm helping the birds get through some tough times. And kind of getting towards the end here, but there's some health benefits to birding. Watching or listening to birds has been proven to reduce anxiety. It reduces stress. It reduces the presence of depressive thoughts or moods, and increases feelings of connected to nature. The magic number of minutes to spend outside, according to experts, and this is peer-reviewed, this is research and evidence-based, is about 20 minutes per day, or roughly 2 hours a week, preferably in the morning so that you're going out and getting sunlight. And so when you have individuals or communities that's experiencing lots of anxiety and stress, that's when you start to get some of your outcomes that are less savory and that we try to avoid as individuals or as a society. That can include substance abuse and domestic abuse. And so there's a correlation with the amount of time that is spent outside around natural areas in the presence of parks. And it doesn't necessarily need to be trees. It can be desert landscapes too. And there are reports and strong correlations and links with reductions in stress and anxiety and domestic and substance abuse, and higher reports of well-being and academic performance in these areas. So in conclusion, for me there, the more that we create habitat for birds, we're creating habitat for birds to survive, but we're also benefiting because of the benefits of being around nature. So for you to become a more casual city birder, you can do a couple things, and you can take photos of these screens. For one, there are all these apps now that you can use, like eBird or iNaturalist. You can put that water dish out, like I mentioned. Pay attention to colors, patterns, shapes, sizes, behaviors of birds and habitats. Learn the common birds first. It is helpful to learn the grackle, the mourning dove, your hummingbirds, your mockingbird, even your pigeons, and then you'll start to notice when some of the odd birds show up. Again, we've had over 400 species of birds here. So chances are, as you begin to pay attention more, you're going to notice more and more birds. So binoculars are great, not needed, and get a field guide. Audubon Bird Guide app is free. You can join us at Red Rock Audubon. We visit most of these places here. See if you can find where you live or work and find a place to go birding. Yeah, either on the way to work, on the way back from work. Get the kids or your family or yourself out during the weekend. Try to get your 2 hours a week and enjoy the bounty of birds that actually live in Las Vegas in this urban oasis. Quick look at some of the calendar events at Red Rock Audubon. We do tons of stuff. This is a snapshot of our monthly calendar. So we tend to do about 10 different programs per month. They're open to the public. They're free. You don't need to be a member. We're not going to solicit you. We just want to get people out because we truly believe that by getting people out into nature and feeling like a part of community, that it's better for them and better for birds. So that's it. Here's how you can stay in touch with me. I have my email addresses there, and you can follow us on Instagram. You can follow me at Instagram. I'm usually pretty responsive. So if you have questions that we can't get to today, let me know, and I will try my best to help you out. Olivia, I'll hand it over to you. I'm sorry I went a little over time, but I hope that your staff and colleagues found this very informative and helpful.
Great. Fantastic. Thank you so much, Alex, for sharing all your insight and expertise on our local birds we see throughout Clark County. If anybody has to jump off, totally fine. We're just going to go over some questions now. And like I said in the beginning, the presentation is recorded. So if you ask a question and you can't stay, it'll be recorded for further viewing. And then we have Alex's contact information here. So now let me pull up the questions. Okay. Has there been a decrease in migrating birds and other wildlife due to the decrease of water in Lake Mead along the Colorado River?
There has not been huge changes in the Lake Mead area, and not necessarily along the river as a correlation with the depletion of water available there. But I would think about what's going on before the water reaches the Colorado River, and that would be all the smaller streams and creeks that eventually fill into the Colorado River and feed the Colorado River. I like to think of the Colorado River as the main artery that runs through the Western United States. But of course, there are all these other veins that are the creeks and streams that run into the Colorado River along the way. And that's where a lot of these migratory birds spend more of their time. So birds can always find water at Lake Mead or the Colorado River, but it's harder for them to find water in the Spring Mountains. And a lot of our water from the Spring Mountains kind of act as those veins eventually running into Lake Mead. And that's where you start to have some of those issues for those migratory birds.
Thanks for explaining that. Next question, it says, hi, Alex, great presentation. Does Red Rock Audubon have events for those in wheelchairs or have difficulty walking?
It's something that we try to do more of. We try to make sure that our routes are accessible and that when we do our birding trips, that they're always in an area where people on wheelchairs or might have mobility issues can access. This weekend, we're actually hosting a wheelchair accessible birding event up at Corn Creek in Desert National Wildlife Refuge. I believe that's this Saturday. And it's with the Trail Access Group. So they're an organization that actually try to get people out into areas where basically everyone is accessing it with a wheelchair. So that's pretty cool that we're trying to do that more and more. So anytime that there's somebody in the community that says, hey, I want to participate, but I'm not sure I can because of some mobility limitations, like we want to know about that type of stuff so that we can tailor our programs accordingly. But we do keep that in mind quite a bit. So that's the long answer. The short answer is yes, we do.
Thank you. Great to know. Are there wildlife photography classes available through Red Rock Audubon?
Every now and then. It's not something that we regularly do. but we have some volunteers who are professional wildlife photographers. And we work with B&C Camera every now and then. B&C Camera is a privately owned camera shop that they'll have classes on wildlife photography. But I would follow redrockaudubon.com, or excuse me, Red Rock Audubon on Instagram, and you'll be able to connect with other wildlife photographers. There are about 15 or 20 wildlife photographers that get together and tend to go photograph animals together. Like there's a bobcat that's being seen at one of the sites that we regularly go to. And so they're sharing that local knowledge. So you can also follow along on my Instagram, and I can try to help you out to get started or give some tips. I do a lot of wildlife photography as well. So feel free to reach out to me there or over email if you're not on Instagram.
Thank you. We do have a few more questions. Can you briefly touch upon how solar and wind fields affect birds?
Sure. Yes, I worked in the solar and wind renewable industry as a biological consultant. And wind farms definitely affect birds because they're moving at a height that a lot of birds are flying at. And so that's problematic for lots of birds of prey that don't have huge population numbers. They're also problematic for bats, believe it or not. Solar facilities also have detrimental effects on them. The type that has the most detrimental effects are the ones that are the ones that reflect like radiation onto towers, like the one that's outside of Primm, Nevada, over in the Ivanpah Valley. That's called I think it's just the Ivanpah solar generation facility, but those are not common. So usually you have like the PV, a regular solar panel, and you'll have thousands of those. So there's habitat loss to that. But I'd say wind farms are a lot more impactful on birds and bats. But the thing here to remember is that like these things are coming. Like we do need more carbon neutral forms of energy. Like that's pretty clear at this point, given how quickly our climate is changing due to the amount of carbon dioxide and methane in the atmosphere and other greenhouse gases. So we absolutely need them. But placement is important. There are certain places where you can put solar and wind facilities where they're going to have less effect on birds because less birds live in that certain area. So you wouldn't want to put a solar facility next to a wetland, for example, because we know that wetlands attract lots of birds. But if you put them out in certain valleys, well, that's probably going to have less effect overall, but there will inherently always be some sort of impact. The question is, how much impact are we willing to see?
Great, I appreciate you explaining that. Two more questions for us. Says, hi Alex, thank you for presenting. I learned a lot. I know not to feed birds bread, but when I go to the park with my little ones, is it okay to feed the birds seeds, or is it best to let them forage on their own?
Birds are usually pretty capable of finding food on their own. They'll tend to congregate in places where it's easier to find food. So when people are bringing food to them, they're just like, cool, I don't have to spend the day like, searching for food if it's going to come here. So like they don't need humans to do it necessarily. But if you are going to do it, it can be super enjoyable. Feeding them bird seed is good, or something that is leafy and organic. You don't want to give them something that has pesticides or insecticides on them. So celery or spinach is good. Or excuse me, not celery. Like spinach or kale, like leafy dark greens. Things that are healthy to you, that are leafy, are pretty good for ducks as well.
Okay, great. And then the last comment and question we have says, great presentation. I listen to bird songs on my phone in the morning to boost my mood. I appreciate your presentation going over how nature is good for our mental health and our well-being. What other forms of engagement can we practice without actually being nature, such as today's Lunch and Learn?
Good question. So Yeah, getting outside is great. I know that there are some really cold days, and then of course there's some really hot days in Las Vegas, and it can be really challenging to see how that can be beneficial. But science is now coming out that says that if you get the body moving within the first hour of daylight, you get outside and you get natural light in the eyes, you are inherently kicking off a process that regulates healthy levels of cortisol, so that's your primary stress hormone, and starts to generate serotonin, and increases a boost in well-earned dopamine. Dopamine being sort of like something that we're kind of always looking for or being rewarded with whenever we go through behavior. Well, if you go out and take a walk and you're getting sunlight and you're just getting the body moving, you're getting healthy and well-earned forms of these neurotransmitters. So that's sort of like the geeky scientific term or reasons for it, but simply getting out into nature and spending 10 minutes to 20 minutes in the morning, and then maybe getting that last bit as the sun is going down, it kicks you off to a good start in the morning, but also dials your circadian rhythm so that you're on a healthier sleep cycle and actually gets you ready for bedtime in a healthy way. So that can have all these downstream effects in terms of like managing your stress or anxiety levels and be really healthy for you. Bird song, natural sound, mindfulness meditation, any of those things, especially if you're doing it for 10 to 20 minutes a day, the mindfulness component can have huge benefits. And I find that it's easier to do it in nature than in areas that are less natural, like say in a busy area or around a bunch of lights and sound and distractions. So it'd be more beneficial to do mindfulness practice in nature versus the Las Vegas Strip at 12 p.m., for example.
Right. Well, thank you so much, Alex, for answering all of our questions. If we didn't get to your question or if you have more, feel free to comment on this page and we'll get back to them the best we can. But that is it for today. And we really appreciate everybody tuning in and engaging. And a very special thank you to Alex for coming on today and sharing a piece of the natural world with us and how to better protect birds. From the questions, it sounded like everyone is really interested in boosting their connection to nature, which, as we went over, will increase our well-being and boost our energy. Like I said, if you have any further questions, please don't hesitate to reach out and we will answer them the best as possible. And that is at the end for today's presentation on urban birds. I hope everyone has a happy and safe Wednesday. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.